Opening hook. If you ever hear knocking from beneath your floorboards at exactly 3:27 a.m., don't answer. Because whatever is knocking already knows your name. The first time Ethan heard it, he thought it was a pipe. A dull metallic sound. Knock. Silence. Knock. Silence. Then a third one. Knock. 3 perfectly spaced knocks from somewhere beneath his kitchen floor. Ethan Miller had lived in rural Pennsylvania for only 6 weeks. The old farmhouse sat alone among dead cornfields and dense woods. The nearest neighbor was almost 2 miles away. It was exactly what he wanted. Peace, isolation, a chance to escape. The city still haunted him. Every night he saw the accident. The truck, the shattered windshield, his wife screaming. Then silence. 3 years had passed since Sarah died, but the guilt remained. His therapist called it survivor's guilt. Ethan called it punishment. So when he inherited the farmhouse from a distant uncle he'd never met, he packed everything and left Philadelphia behind. The house itself looked ancient, built sometime in the late 1800s. Crooked walls, sagging roof, a porch that groaned whenever the wind touched it. But Ethan liked it. Old houses had history. History felt honest. Unlike people, unlike memories. The second time he heard the knocking, it woke him from sleep. 3:27 a.m., exactly. 3 knocks, beneath the bedroom floor. Knock, knock, knock. Ethan sat upright, his heart pounded. The room was dark, except for pale moonlight leaking through the curtains. The house was silent afterward. No footsteps, no animals, nothing. He checked the time. 3:27 a.m. Strange, but old houses made noises. He convinced himself of that and returned to sleep. The next morning he asked around town. The local diner sat near the highway. Only a handful of customers occupied the booths. An elderly waitress poured coffee into his mug. "House making noises?" she asked. Ethan looked surprised. "How'd you know?" She shrugged. "Every newcomer asks eventually." A few people glanced over. The atmosphere changed instantly, like someone had turned the room colder. "What kind of noises?" she asked quietly. "Knocking." The waitress froze. The coffee pot trembled slightly in her hand. "Where?" "Beneath the floor." No one spoke. A man eating pancakes stood up and left without finishing his meal. The waitress looked pale. "You should ignore it." Ethan laughed. "Ignore what?" "The knocking." "Why?" She set down the coffee pot. "Because if you answer, it answers back." Then she walked away. That night, Ethan couldn't stop thinking about it. The waitress, the reaction, the fear. It felt ridiculous. Small-town ghost stories, nothing more. Yet curiosity kept growing, like a splinter buried beneath skin. At 3:27 a.m., he sat awake in the living room, waiting, watching, listening. The digital clock changed. 3:26, 3:27, silence. Then, knock, from beneath the floor, louder than before. Knock, knock. The sound echoed through the house. Ethan stood. Every hair on his arms rose. The noise came from the kitchen, specifically from a section of floor near the pantry. He approached carefully. Then he noticed something strange. There was a metal ring embedded in the floor, hidden beneath a faded rug. He had never seen it before. His stomach tightened. Slowly he pulled the rug aside. A square wooden hatch appeared beneath it. Dust covered the edges. Ancient nails surrounded the frame. A trapdoor leading downward. "Seriously?" He laughed nervously. A forgotten cellar. That explained everything. Probably loose pipes, old foundations. Nothing supernatural. Nothing scary. Yet he couldn't shake the feeling that someone was watching him from the other side. The next morning, Ethan searched the house records. At the county courthouse, he discovered something odd. The farmhouse blueprints showed no basement, no cellar, no underground rooms, nothing. According to official records, the house had never contained a trapdoor. Yet it existed. Right there in his kitchen, a clerk noticed his confusion. "What address?" Ethan showed her. Her expression immediately changed. "You inherited that place?" "Yeah." The clerk hesitated, then leaned closer. "Has it started knocking yet?" A chill crawled across Ethan's neck. "People keep asking me that." "Answer the question." "Yes." The woman swallowed hard. "My grandfather used to tell stories about that property." "What kind?" She looked around before speaking. "People disappeared there." Ethan rolled his eyes. "Every town has stories. This isn't a story." Her voice shook. "The disappearances happened for nearly a century." Ethan stopped smiling. The clerk continued. "Families moved in. Months later, someone vanished. Sometimes a child, sometimes a spouse, sometimes everyone. And nobody ever found them." That evening, Ethan returned home uneasy. Clouds covered the sky. The woods seemed darker than usual. The farmhouse looked less welcoming, like it was waiting, watching, hungry. He tried distracting himself with television. It didn't help. Every creak sounded deliberate. Every shadow seemed alive. By midnight, rain hammered the roof. Thunder shook the walls. The power flickered, then died. Darkness swallowed everything. Great. Ethan grabbed a flashlight. The beam cut through the blackness. Outside, the storm intensified. Branches slammed against windows. Wind howled like distant screams. Then he heard it. Not knocking, whispering, soft, barely audible, coming from beneath the floor. Ethan froze. The whisper continued. A voice, a human voice, muffled by wood and distance. At first he couldn't understand the words. Then slowly they became clear. "Help me." His blood turned cold. The voice sounded female, weak, terrified. "Please." The flashlight trembled in his hand. "Help me." Every instinct screamed at him to leave. Call the police. Run. Do anything except investigate. Yet curiosity won. Curiosity always wins. He pulled the rug aside. The trapdoor waited. The whisper continued beneath it. "Please help." Ethan grabbed the metal ring. The wood felt strangely warm, as though something alive rested underneath. He lifted. The hinges groaned. A burst of foul air exploded upward. Rot, mold, something worse. The smell of decay. Ethan nearly gagged. The flashlight revealed stone steps descending into darkness, far deeper than any basement should be. The staircase seemed endless, vanishing into blackness. The voice echoed upward. Then, silence. Ethan stood at the top for several minutes, trying to convince himself not to go down, trying to act rationally. But the possibility remained. What if someone was trapped? What if they needed help? Eventually, he started descending. One step, then another. The darkness swallowed him. The temperature dropped sharply. The air grew damp, heavy, oppressive. The staircase continued far longer than physically possible. 20 steps, 30, 40, 50. The house above should have disappeared by now. Yet somehow he kept going down, and down, and down, until finally the stairs ended. The flashlight illuminated a corridor. Stone walls stretched into darkness. Ancient bricks covered with black stains. The tunnel extended far beyond the dimensions of the farmhouse. Impossible. Absolutely impossible. Yet there it was. A corridor beneath the earth. Waiting. Silent. Ethan turned around. The staircase behind him was gone. His stomach dropped. There was only solid stone. No stairs. No trapdoor. No exit. Nothing. Just wall. A wall that hadn't existed seconds earlier. Panic surged through him. No, He rushed forward, touched the stone. Cold, real, permanent. His breathing accelerated. He was trapped. Somewhere underground. Somewhere impossible. Then he heard footsteps, ahead, in the darkness, dragging, approaching. The beam of his flashlight shook violently. The footsteps grew louder. Scrape, step, scrape, step. Something was coming. Ethan backed away. His pulse thundered. The darkness ahead shifted. A figure emerged. Tall, extremely tall. Its head nearly touched the ceiling. Human-shaped, but wrong. Its limbs bent backward. Its skin looked gray and stretched too tightly across its body. And its face, there wasn't one. Only smooth flesh. No eyes, no nose, no mouth. Nothing. The thing stopped, facing him, listening, waiting. Then a mouth opened vertically from the center of its face, like a wound splitting apart. Hundreds of human teeth appeared inside, and it smiled. The creature spoke, in Sarah's voice, Ethan's dead wife. Ethan, his heart stopped. The voice was perfect, exactly the same. Every detail, every inflection. Impossible. The thing took another step. "I missed you." Tears filled his eyes instantly. For a moment, grief overwhelmed terror. Because it sounded like her. Because part of him wanted it to be her. The creature smiled wider. Its jaw split open farther, 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 until the mouth stretched from forehead to throat. Thousands of teeth glistened inside. Then Sarah's voice disappeared. A different voice emerged. A child's. Then an old man. Then dozens. Hundreds. All speaking simultaneously. All screaming. All begging. All trapped inside that impossible mouth. And Ethan realized something horrifying. Those weren't imitations. Those were real voices. People, still alive, somehow, inside it. The creature lunged. Ethan turned and ran. The tunnel shook behind him. The thing moved unnaturally fast. Its limbs slammed against stone walls. The screams followed. Hundreds of voices. Thousands. Desperate. Terrified. Hungry. The corridor twisted endlessly ahead. No exit. No light. Only darkness. Only pursuit. Then Ethan saw a door. An old wooden door standing alone in the tunnel wall. He threw it open and dove inside. The creature slammed into the doorway seconds later. Its claws scraped the frame. The door shook violently, but somehow remained closed, for now. Ethan backed away, breathing hard. Then he looked around the room, and immediately wished he hadn't. Because the walls were covered with photographs. Thousands of photographs. Every missing person connected to the farmhouse. Children, adults, families, decades worth of faces. And every single photograph had one thing in common. Behind each smiling person stood the same faceless creature, watching, waiting, getting closer with every picture. Then Ethan found a photograph of himself, pinned to the center wall, fresh, recently taken. He had never seen it before. The image showed him sleeping in his bedroom, taken only days ago. Someone or something had been standing beside his bed, watching him sleep. And in the corner of the photograph, partially hidden by darkness, was Sarah, his dead wife, smiling. But her eyes were completely black. Ethan stared at the photograph. His hands trembled so badly that the picture nearly slipped from his fingers. It was impossible. Sarah had been dead for 3 years. He had identified her body himself. He remembered the funeral, the coffin, the rain, the unbearable silence afterward. Yet there she was, standing beside his bed, smiling, watching, her eyes completely black. Not empty, not hollow, black, as if something was looking out through her, something that wasn't human. A loud impact slammed against the wooden door behind him. Boom! The entire room shook. Dust rained from the ceiling. The creature was still outside, waiting, trying to get in. Another impact followed. Boom! The old hinges groaned. Ethan forced himself to look away from the photograph wall. He needed another exit. Fast. The room wasn't large, just stone walls covered with thousands of photographs. But something caught his attention. Near the far corner stood a small desk. Ancient, covered in dust. A single notebook rested on top. The leather cover looked decades old. Someone had written a name on it. Jacob Holloway. Ethan recognized it immediately. The name appeared repeatedly in local newspaper archives. Jacob Holloway, a 12-year-old boy, missing since 1978. Never found. Another crash echoed from the door. Boom! A crack appeared in the wood. Ethan grabbed the notebook. The pages were yellow and fragile. Entry: March 3rd, 1978. The knocking started last week. Dad says it's rats. Mom says it's pipes. But I know somebody is down there. Last night, it called my name. Ethan flipped pages. The handwriting became shakier, more desperate. March 12. I opened the trapdoor. There are stairs. They go farther down every night. The basement wasn't there before. I checked. Dad can't see it. Only I can. Ethan felt ice spreading through his chest. Only I can. The words echoed in his mind. March 17th. The thing below knows things. It knew about my brother. Nobody knows what happened to my brother. Not even Mom. But it told me. It told me exactly where he died. Another impact rattled the room. The crack in the door widened. Thin fingers pushed through. Long gray fingers, searching, feeling. Ethan continued reading. March 20th. The voices aren't fake. The people inside are real. They never leave. They become part of it. Forever. The next page contained only one sentence, written over and over, hundreds of times. Don't listen to Sarah. Don't listen to Sarah. Don't listen to Sarah. Ethan froze. His blood ran cold. How could a boy from 1978 know Sarah's name? She wasn't even born then. Yet the words covered every inch of paper, as though Jacob had become obsessed, trying desperately to warn whoever came next. A soft voice suddenly whispered behind him. Ethan. He spun around. Nobody was there. Then the voice came again. Closer. Sweetheart. Sarah. The real Sarah. At least it sounded like her. Gentle. Warm. Exactly how she used to sound before falling asleep beside him. Tears formed instantly. He hated himself for it. Because part of him wanted to hear her again. Wanted it more than anything. Ethan. The voice emerged from the wall itself. You have to trust me. The door shook violently. Boom, boom, boom. The creature outside had grown impatient. The thing outside isn't me, Sarah whispered. I'm trapped. No, Ethan muttered. You're dead. I know. Her voice broke. And it's hurting. Something about that sentence disturbed him more than anything else. Not because of what she said, but because of how she said it. Like someone who had suffered for a very long time. The stone wall rippled. A face slowly emerged from it. Sarah's face, as though she were pushing through liquid rock. Only her head appeared, nothing else. Her skin looked pale, her eyes normal, not black, normal. And she was crying. Please help me. Ethan couldn't move, couldn't breathe, couldn't think, because she looked exactly as he remembered. Every detail, every freckle, every strand of hair. Then she said something impossible. Your fault wasn't the accident. Ethan felt his knees weaken. Only Sarah knew why those words mattered. Because everyone believed Ethan blamed himself for the crash. But the truth was different. Much worse. A secret he had never told anyone. Not even his therapist. Not even the police. The night of the accident, Sarah had confessed something. She had been having an affair. The argument exploded. Ethan took his eyes off the road, only for seconds. That was enough. The truck appeared, the collision happened, and Sarah died before she could explain. Nobody knew. Nobody, except Sarah. And now this thing. Ethan, the face in the wall stared at him. It knows your guilt. It feeds on guilt. The room suddenly grew colder. The more you believe you deserve punishment, Sarah whispered, the stronger it becomes. The creature outside stopped pounding. Silence filled the tunnel. Complete silence. And somehow, that was worse. Much worse. Because Ethan realized it was listening. The photographs on the walls began moving. At first, Ethan thought it was a trick of light. Then he noticed the people inside the images were changing positions, blinking, turning, watching him. Thousands of trapped faces, moving inside the photographs, like prisoners behind glass. A little girl suddenly pressed her hands against one picture, mouthing words, "Help me." A man beside her screamed silently. A woman scratched desperately at the inside of another photograph, trying to escape. Ethan backed away, horrified. The notebook fell from his hands. Then every photograph spoke at once. Thousands of voices, whispering, crying, begging. The noise filled the room, overwhelming, impossible. And among them, Ethan heard a familiar voice, his own. He froze. The voice came from a photograph near the floor, a picture he hadn't noticed before. Ethan crouched down. The image showed him, older, much older. His hair was gray, his face lined with age. He looked exhausted, broken, and trapped. The older Ethan stared directly out of the photograph, then spoke. "Run." Ethan stumbled backward. The image continued moving. "Run now. What are you?" The older version of himself looked terrified. "You. No. Yes." The man's eyes filled with tears. "You came here before." "What? You just don't remember." Nothing made sense. "I've never been here." The older Ethan laughed bitterly. "You've been here hundreds of times." A terrible feeling settled into Ethan's stomach, like falling from a great height. "What does that mean?" The older version looked toward the ceiling, towards something Ethan couldn't see. Then he whispered, "It resets." The words felt wrong, unnatural, like they carried meaning beyond language. "The house isn't a place." "What?" "It's a trap." The photograph flickered, static spread across the image. The thing beneath it isn't hunting people. His older self looked directly into his eyes. "It's farming them." Then the picture went dark. The room exploded. Not literally. Reality itself seemed to tear apart. The photographs ripped from the walls, flying through the air. Thousands of images swirling around Ethan like a storm. Faces screamed, hands reached outward. The stone floor cracked. Something enormous moved beneath it. Something far bigger than the creature outside. Far bigger than the house. Far bigger than the tunnels. A deep vibration rolled through the earth. A sound like an impossible heartbeat. Thump, thump, thump. Every photograph suddenly pointed in the same direction, toward a narrow hallway Ethan hadn't noticed before. At the end stood another door. Black. Perfectly black. No handle. No lock. No markings. Just darkness. The voices began screaming. All of them. "Run. Run. Run. Run." Ethan didn't hesitate. He sprinted toward the black door. Behind him, the room collapsed. Stone shattered. Photographs burned. And something gigantic began rising from beneath the floor. He never looked back, because instinct told him that seeing it would destroy him. Maybe kill him. Maybe worse. The black door opened by itself. Ethan ran through, then stopped. His heart nearly failed, because the room beyond wasn't underground. It wasn't a tunnel. It wasn't even part of the farmhouse. It was Philadelphia, his old apartment, exactly as it had been 3 years ago. Every detail identical. The couch, the television, the bookshelves, everything. Even Sarah's coffee mug sat on the kitchen counter. Ethan stood frozen. "What is this?" A voice answered from behind him. "Our favorite place, Sarah." He turned slowly. She stood in the hallway. Alive, beautiful, normal. No black eyes, no pale skin, no horror. Just Sarah, the woman he loved, the woman he lost. She smiled softly, and for one terrifying moment, Ethan wanted to believe it. Because grief never truly leaves. It just waits. Quietly. Patiently. For opportunities like this. Sarah walked closer. "I missed you." Ethan felt tears returning. His chest hurt. Everything hurt. "You aren't real." "No." She nodded sadly. "I'm not." The honesty surprised him. "But I was." She sat on the couch, just like she used to. "That's why this place works." "What place?" Sarah looked around the apartment. The feeding rooms. The name alone felt wrong. Ancient, disgusting, like something humanity wasn't meant to understand. "It builds worlds from memory." She touched the coffee mug. "Perfect worlds. Why?" "To keep people here." Ethan stared at her. "Who are you?" The smile faded. "I'm what's left." A long silence followed. Then Sarah whispered something that made Ethan's blood freeze. "It isn't beneath the house." "What?" "The creature. The thing in the tunnels." Sarah shook her head. "That's only a finger." "A finger?" Ethan couldn't comprehend the idea. The monster was already enormous. Impossible. What could be large enough for that thing to be merely a finger? Sarah looked terrified, as though speaking about it was dangerous. "It lives somewhere else." "Where?" Her eyes slowly lifted upward, toward the sky, toward everything, toward reality itself. And Ethan finally understood. Not beneath the house, not beneath the earth, beneath existence. A loud knock echoed through the apartment. 3 knocks, exactly 3. Sarah immediately stood. Fear filled her face. "No." Another knock followed, closer. "It found you." The walls began bleeding black liquid. The ceiling cracked. The apartment trembled. Reality was breaking again. Sarah grabbed Ethan's arm. For the first time he felt physical contact. Cold, desperate, real. "Listen carefully." "What?" "You only have one chance." The knocking grew louder. Boom, boom, boom. The front door started opening. Something stood outside. Something enormous. Something that shouldn't fit in any doorway. Sarah's voice shook. Ethan stared at her. The what? The well of voices. Her eyes filled with tears. "Don't look inside." The door opened wider. Darkness flooded the room. Endless darkness. Sarah pushed Ethan backward. "Promise me." The darkness moved. Alive, hungry, ancient. Ethan's heart pounded. "What happens if I look?" Sarah began crying. Because she already knew the answer. Because she had seen it herself. And her final words echoed through the collapsing room. "If you look inside," the darkness smiled, "it will show you why it chose you." The darkness stepped through the doorway. At first, Ethan couldn't understand what he was seeing. His mind refused to process it. The shape was too large, too wrong. The apartment itself seemed unable to contain it. Walls stretched unnaturally, ceilings elongated. Reality bent around the thing as if space itself feared touching it. Sarah grabbed Ethan's wrist. "Run!" The floor exploded beneath them. The apartment shattered like glass. Thousands of cracks spread across every surface. The living room dissolved into darkness. Furniture fell apart into black dust, and Ethan felt himself falling. Not downward, not upward, but somewhere else entirely. The sensation lasted only seconds. Then he slammed onto solid ground. Pain shot through his shoulder. He rolled onto his back and gasped. The apartment was gone. Sarah was gone. Everything was gone. Above him stretched a sky without stars, a sky without a moon, a sky without anything, just endless darkness. Ethan slowly stood. His flashlight was somehow still in his hand. The weak beam revealed a barren landscape. Gray earth, dead trees, ancient stone structures scattered across the horizon. The air felt cold and stale, like breathing inside a tomb. Then he heard them. Voices, thousands of voices, whispering, crying, laughing, screaming, all at once. The sound came from somewhere ahead, and despite the distance, Ethan knew exactly where it originated. The well. He walked, because there was nowhere else to go. The dead landscape stretched endlessly. Time felt strange here. Minutes passed, or hours, maybe days. The darkness above never changed. Eventually he reached a hill, and there he saw it. The Well of Voices. His heart stopped. It wasn't a normal well. It was enormous, larger than a stadium. A circular hole carved into the earth, its edges lined with ancient black stone. The opening stretched hundreds of feet across, and from within came the voices, millions of them. The sound was unbearable. Every language, every emotion, every human scream, every human cry, all echoing upward from the abyss. Ethan approached carefully. Sarah's warning repeated in his mind. Don't look inside. Don't look inside. Don't look inside. A figure stood beside the well. An old woman, thin, pale, wearing a tattered white dress. She appeared human, but Ethan no longer trusted appearances. The woman looked at him and smiled sadly. You made it. Ethan stopped. Who are you? I don't remember my name anymore. Her voice sounded exhausted, like someone who had lived far too long. How long have you been here? She laughed quietly. I asked that same question once. Answer me. The woman stared at the well. I arrived in 1912. Ethan froze. More than a century. Impossible. The woman seemed to understand his disbelief. It doesn't work the same here. What doesn't? Whispers intensified. The old woman stepped away from the well. You shouldn't stand too close. Why? Her expression darkened. Because eventually, everyone wants to look. Ethan studied her carefully. You know what this place is? Yes. What is it? The woman closed her eyes, as though the answer itself caused pain. It's hungry. No. Ethan shook his head. I mean, what is it? The woman pointed toward the abyss. That. The well. Ethan stared at the massive opening. It doesn't have a name, the old woman continued. Humans gave it names throughout history. Demon, God, devil, monster. She shook her head. All wrong. A terrible feeling settled inside Ethan. Then what is it? The old woman looked directly into his eyes. It's older than those words. Silence followed. Then she whispered, it's what existed before fear had a name. The ground trembled. The voices inside the well suddenly became louder. Ethan stepped back. What was that? The old woman's face turned pale. It knows you're here. The air grew colder, much colder. Ethan felt something watching him. Not from one direction, from every direction. Like the entire landscape had become aware of his presence. The old woman began backing away, slowly, fearfully. What happens now? She didn't answer immediately. Instead, she looked at him with pity. Genuine pity. That always happens. A distant sound echoed across the wasteland. Footsteps. Massive footsteps. Boom, boom, boom. Each impact shook the ground. Something enormous was approaching. Far larger than the creature Ethan had encountered in the tunnels. The old woman whispered, The collectors are coming. They appeared over the horizon. 3 gigantic figures, at least 50 feet tall, humanoid, thin, gray, faceless. The same creatures from the tunnels, except these were much larger, much older. Their limbs stretched unnaturally long. Their movements resembled puppets controlled by invisible strings. Each carried chains, thousands of chains. The chains rattled endlessly, and attached to those chains were people. Hundreds of people, humans, dragged across the wasteland, screaming, begging, crying. Ethan's stomach twisted. Some appeared modern. Others wore clothing from different centuries, different eras, different countries, all being dragged toward the well. The old woman nodded sadly. Yes, the nearest collector stopped. Its faceless head slowly turned toward Ethan. Then a vertical mouth opened, and it smiled. The collector spoke, using Ethan's voice. "Welcome back." The words hit him like a punch. Back. Again. The same word his older self had used. The same impossible implication. The creature took another step. The chains rattled. The trapped humans screamed. And suddenly Ethan remembered something. Not a complete memory, just a fragment. A flash. He saw himself standing beside the well. Older. Broken. Looking into the abyss. Then darkness. The vision vanished instantly. But the damage was done. Because now he knew. The memory was real. He had been here before. The collector pointed toward the well. "Look." Ethan immediately stepped backward. "No." The creature smiled wider. "Look." The voices inside the well changed. Among millions of whispers, one voice emerged clearly. His mother's. "Ethan." Another voice followed, his father's. Then Sarah's. Then every person he had ever known. Every person he had ever loved, calling his name, begging him to look. The temptation became overwhelming, because humans are curious, even when curiosity destroys them. Especially then. The old woman grabbed Ethan's arm. "Don't." Her voice shook. "You don't understand." The collector took another step. "You already looked." Froze. "What?" The creature laughed. A horrible sound, like thousands of people laughing simultaneously. "You looked long ago." The fragment returned, stronger this time. The well, the abyss, the voices, and himself leaning forward, staring inside. No, the memory deepened. He saw impossible shapes, impossible truths, things the human brain wasn't built to understand. Then he remembered the worst part, the thing he had forgotten, the thing his mind had buried. He had not escaped. He had been released. Ethan staggered backward. The realization shattered something inside him. The old woman saw it immediately. "You remember?" "Yes." His voice barely worked. The collector smiled. "Tell her." Ethan looked at the old woman, then at the well, then back at the approaching giants, and finally he whispered the truth. "We aren't prisoners." The old woman's face changed. Confusion, fear, understanding. Ethan nodded. Tears filled his eyes. "The people it takes." His voice broke. "Their bait." The wasteland fell silent. Even the whispers seemed to pause, because the truth was worse than anyone imagined. Much worse. The well didn't feed on humans. Humans were insignificant, tiny, meaningless. The well fed on something else. Hope, love, regret, memory, guilt, every powerful human emotion. It released people back into the world, allowed them to live, allowed them to suffer, allowed them to create connections, families, friends, children. Then eventually it called them back, bringing all those emotions with them, a harvest, not of flesh, but of souls. The old woman began crying, because she understood. Everyone she had known, everyone she had lost, everything, part of the cycle, part of the feeding process. The collector nodded. "Now you remember." Ethan remembered more, much more. Fragments flooded his mind. Lives, thousands of lives. Different names, different faces, different centuries, different worlds. All connected, all ending here, at the well. Every single time. The sky suddenly cracked. A gigantic fracture spread across the darkness above. White light poured through. For the first time, Ethan saw beyond the wasteland, beyond the well, beyond reality itself, and what he saw nearly destroyed him. The universe wasn't floating in space. It was floating inside something. Something alive. Something impossibly vast. Galaxies resembled dust particles. Stars resembled sparks. Entire civilizations appeared microscopic and wrapped around everything. Something was sleeping, watching, waiting, hungry. The true body of the well, the collectors, the tunnels, the farmhouse, everything. Only tiny pieces of it, like cells belonging to a much larger organism. The fracture sealed itself. Darkness returned. Ethan collapsed to his knees. Blood ran from his nose, his ears, his eyes. The human mind wasn't meant to witness things like that. The old woman helped him stand. "We have to leave." "No." Ethan stared at the well, because he finally understood why he was here. Why Sarah had appeared. Why the creature had chosen him. There was still something hidden, one final truth, and it was waiting inside the abyss. The voices suddenly became louder, millions of them, then billions, and among them Ethan heard Sarah one last time. "Ethan." Her voice sounded terrified, not for herself, for him. The well began moving. The enormous stone rim cracked. The abyss widened. Something inside was waking up. Something ancient. Something that hadn't opened its eyes in a very long time. The collectors immediately dropped to their knees. The old woman screamed. The ground split apart beneath them. A single eye slowly opened. An eye larger than cities. Larger than mountains. Larger than anything Ethan could comprehend. And it looked directly at him. The voice that emerged wasn't sound. It was thought. Ancient. Endless. Hungry. "I remember you." The eye stared at Ethan. An eye larger than mountains. Larger than oceans. Larger than worlds. Its pupil was a bottomless void. Its iris moved like entire galaxies rotating inside liquid darkness. And somehow it recognized him. Not as a human, not as Ethan Miller, but as something older. Something buried beneath countless forgotten lives. The voice entered his mind again. "I remember you." The words carried impossible weight. Ancient memories exploded inside Ethan's head. He screamed, fell to his knees, clutched his skull. But there was no escaping them, because they were his memories. Images flashed through his mind. A stone city beneath a black sky. A civilization older than recorded history. People gathering around a massive pit. The well. Smaller than it was now, but already hungry. Already alive. Ethan saw himself among them. Not Ethan Miller. A different man. Different face. Different name. Yet somehow still him. The man stood at the edge of the abyss, holding a torch, speaking to a crowd, leading them, worshipping the thing below. Then another memory struck, a terrible one. The ancient man wasn't a victim, he wasn't prey, he wasn't trapped, he was responsible. Ethan gasped. The truth unfolded. Long ago, humanity had discovered the well. Not accidentally. Someone found it. Someone spoke to it. Someone listened. And that someone had been him. Not Ethan, but the first version of him. A soul wearing another face. Another life. Another age. The founder. The first servant. The first fool. The first human to answer the voices. The eye watched silently, patiently, waiting, as though it had all the time in existence. because perhaps it did. The old woman beside Ethan stepped backward. Fear filled her face. "What is it showing you?" Ethan could barely breathe. "I know why it remembers me." The woman's eyes widened. "No." His voice trembled. "Yes." He looked toward the colossal eye, toward the impossible being. "I helped bring it here." The wasteland shook violently. The collectors lowered their heads. The well roared. Millions of voices erupted from the abyss, and Ethan remembered everything. Thousands of lives, thousands of deaths, thousands of returns. Each lifetime ending at the well. Each memory erased afterward. Almost erased, but never completely. A tiny fragment always remained, enough to keep drawing him back. Again and again and again, like a fish caught on an eternal hook. Then he remembered Sarah, the true Sarah, not the imitation, not the memory, the real woman, and suddenly another hidden memory surfaced. One Ethan had buried deeper than all the others. The night of the accident, the final moments, the truck, the crash, the blood, Sarah dying beside him. But something happened afterward. Something impossible. Something he had forgotten, because the well made him forget. The memory became clear. Ethan had survived the crash. Barely. He remembered crawling from the wreckage. Remembered holding Sarah. Remembered her final breath. Then he remembered hearing a voice. A familiar voice. The same voice from beneath the farmhouse. The same voice from the abyss, calling his name. Offering him a choice. Sarah had already died. Nothing could save her. But Ethan couldn't accept it. He begged, cried, screamed, and the voice answered. "Bring her to me." Terror filled him. The eye never blinked, never moved. It simply watched, because it already knew, because it had been there. Ethan remembered carrying Sarah's body, walking through impossible darkness, walking into a place that shouldn't exist. The well. Even then, even before the farmhouse, the well had found him. The truth shattered him. Sarah hadn't been chosen. Sarah hadn't been hunted. Sarah hadn't been taken. He brought her there. Tears streamed down his face. The old woman stared, confused, afraid. What happened? Ethan couldn't look at her, couldn't look at anyone, because he finally understood. The thing beneath reality never took Sarah. He offered her, in exchange for another chance. The eye finally spoke again. "You begged." The words echoed across existence. "You offered everything." Another memory surfaced. Ethan kneeling before the abyss, holding Sarah's body, begging for her return. The voice asking one question, only one. "What will you give?" And Ethan answered, "Anything." The well accepted. Not Sarah. Not immediately. Ethan. His soul. Every future life. Every future memory. Every future happiness. Everything. A contract spanning centuries, spanning realities, spanning existence itself. And in return, Sarah opened her eyes. The old woman looked horrified. "That's impossible." "Yes." Ethan nodded. It was. The memory continued. Sarah alive again, breathing again, crying again. The impossible miracle. But miracles always have a price. And Ethan finally remembered the rest. Sarah wasn't supposed to return. Reality rejected her. Days later, the accident happened again. Exactly the same. The truck, the collision, the death. The universe correcting itself, restoring what should have happened. Sarah died twice, and Ethan forgot everything. All because the well demanded payment later. The eye widened, the abyss trembled. The collectors began screaming, not in pain, in celebration, as if the final piece of a puzzle had fallen into place. The voice entered Ethan's mind once more. The debt remains. The old woman grabbed Ethan's arm. What does it want? Ethan stared at the well, at the impossible eye, at the thing beneath existence, and finally understood. It doesn't want me dead. The woman's face paled. What? It never did. The realization hit like a thunderbolt. The well fed on emotions, on grief, on regret, on hope. Killing Ethan would end the feast. No, the well needed him alive, suffering, forever. Every lifetime, every loss, every heartbreak, every tragedy, all carefully designed, carefully harvested, like crops, and Ethan was its favorite field. The voice whispered, "Come home." The well opened wider. The darkness inside moved. Billions of trapped voices cried out. Sarah among them. Still there, still trapped, after all this time. Then Ethan saw her. Not a memory, not an illusion. The real Sarah, standing among countless souls within the abyss, looking directly at him, and smiling sadly. For a moment, everything became quiet. The wasteland, the voices, the collectors, everything. Only Ethan and Sarah existed, separated by eternity. "I remember now," he whispered. Sarah nodded. "I know. You've been there all this time." Another nod. "I tried to reach you." Tears filled Ethan's eyes. "I'm sorry." Sarah smiled. The same smile she wore the day they met. The same smile she wore during their wedding. The same smile she wore before everything went wrong. "I know." The silence lasted several seconds. Then Sarah said something unexpected. Something simple. Something human. "It's time." Ethan looked confused. Time for what? Sarah glanced toward the eye, toward the well, toward the ancient horror beneath reality. Then she looked back at him. To stop feeding it. The words struck him like lightning, because suddenly he understood. Not just the problem, the solution. The well fed on emotion, especially regret, especially guilt, especially grief. Those emotions connected Ethan to it, bound him to it, powered it for centuries. The contract required suffering, required guilt, required longing, required Ethan's inability to let go. And for the first time in thousands of lives, Ethan stopped running. He stood, slowly, calmly. The eye watched, curious. The collectors rose, uneasy. The abyss grew silent, waiting. Ethan looked at Sarah, then spoke the hardest words of his life. The words he should have spoken years ago. The words he had avoided since the crash. The words buried beneath mountains of grief. "I forgive myself." Nothing happened, at first. Then the well trembled. The eye narrowed. The collectors screamed. And Ethan continued. "The accident happened." His voice shook, but it wasn't my entire life. The darkness stirred, violently. "I loved you." Sarah smiled. "You loved me." Tears rolled down her face. "And I can't keep dragging you back." The ground cracked. The abyss roared. The eye widened in panic. Actual panic, for the first time. Because the well understood. The harvest was ending. For centuries, Ethan had carried guilt, fed it, nurtured it, protected it. Now he was letting it go. The contract began breaking. Huge fractures spread across the eye, across the abyss, across reality itself. The collectors collapsed, their bodies crumbling, their chains shattering. Millions of trapped souls suddenly rose into the sky, like stars, like sparks, like fireflies escaping a jar. The well screamed, not with sound, with thought, memory, with terror. No! The voice shook existence, but it was too late. Ethan looked at Sarah one final time. "I love you." Sarah smiled, a real smile, not sad, not broken, peaceful. Then she vanished. Not destroyed, not consumed, freed. A brilliant light erupted from the abyss. Countless souls ascended. The wasteland collapsed. The sky shattered. The collectors dissolved into dust. The well cracked apart. And the ancient eye looked at Ethan one final time. Not with hatred, not with anger, but with something far stranger. Fear. Because after feeding for ages, it had finally encountered something it could not consume. Acceptance. The eye shattered. Darkness exploded. Reality folded inward. And Ethan fell. For a long time there was nothing. No sound, no light, no fear, no pain. Only silence. Then he opened his eyes. Sunlight. Warm sunlight. Birds singing. Wind moving through trees. Ethan sat upright. Confused. Dazed. Alive. He was back at the farmhouse. Lying in the grass outside. The house stood nearby. Quiet. Ordinary. Old. Nothing more. The trapdoor was gone. The knocking was gone. The whispers were gone. Everything was gone. Authorities later discovered something strange. The farmhouse contained no basement. Never had. According to every record, every blueprint, every inspection, no basement existed. Ethan never argued, never tried to explain. Who would believe him? Months passed, then years. A nightmare stopped. The guilt faded. Not completely, never completely, but enough. Enough to live. Enough to breathe. Enough to move forward. One autumn evening, many years later, Ethan sat on his porch watching the sunset. The sky glowed orange. The wind felt gentle, peaceful. For the first time since Sarah's death, he felt truly free. Then he heard a voice. Soft, familiar, carried by the breeze. Thank you, Sarah, just once. Ethan smiled, closed his eyes, and let the wind carry the voice away. Far beyond the stars, far beyond the darkness, far beyond the well, where some stories end, and some souls finally find their way home.